Today, I want to both answer some questions that I've received and address a certain type of infidelity that many of you deal with, and many of you actually haven't dealt with this, but I hope and trust and pray that there will be some good information in this video blog, even if you haven't suffered what we call a double betrayal. A double betrayal is when you, as a betrayed spouse, experience a situation of infidelity where your spouse has an affair with a best friend, a close friend, or maybe even a family member or someone of that stature. We call it a double betrayal because you've been betrayed by your spouse, but you've also been betrayed by this friend, this confidant, this maybe best friend, or even sometimes a family member. It is truly a double betrayal for the betrayed spouse because the betrayed spouse has to really grieve and process and eventually forgive if they really want to heal both their spouse and this significant friend or family member. When you're dealing with a double betrayal, there are some unique nuances to it. I hesitate to say it's worse, I hesitate to say it's better, or that any other type of infidelity is worse, because the reality is that there are nuances to the types of affairs that spouses have that betrayed spouses have to work their way through. For example, in a double betrayal, you're dealing with some nuances of friendship that you have to process when you have a spouse who has an affair with an escort or prostitutes or strip clubs or things like that, massage parlors. There are nuances to those types of affairs. To try and say that any situation is worse or what have you, it kind of really alienates people, and I don't want to do that. I just want to focus on the fact that there are some nuances to a double betrayal, and I want to give you some quick pointers to help you. Many of you may or may not remember that my affair was with my assistant, who was also one of Samantha's closest friends. She helped raise our kids when they were young. She maintained a place in relationship with Samantha that when my affair came out, she was devastated by, obviously, my affair, but she was also devastated by who I had the affair with. And so if you're a betrayed spouse, here are some things that I think will help you. And if you're an unfaithful spouse, this will help you understand more of the journey of a betrayed spouse. For starters, don't be surprised that if you're a betrayed spouse, it takes longer to forgive the affair partner than it does to forgive your spouse. It absolutely took longer for Samantha to forgive the affair partner than it did for her to forgive me. There's just these nuances, right? When you are betrayed by a best friend or someone of that stature, it strikes to the core of who you are, because this person was supposed to be your confidant. You probably were very vulnerable with them about your spouse, right? So they knew the secrets about your marriage, or they were very close to you and knew your vulnerabilities in a different way than your spouse did. So for them to know your vulnerabilities, know your struggles, know the dark, intimate places of your soul, the frustrations that you were feeling, and then still choose to wound you is devastating. It cuts you in a way that is radically different than if it was just someone who wasn't this close confidant. So number one is it's different. There's just a different nuance, we're calling them today, to the double betrayal. Second of all is it's going to take a while. And my suggestion would be to focus more on forgiving your spouse or your partner than focusing on forgiving the affair partner. Because in many ways, it's going to take longer to forgive the affair partner because of the vulnerability that you probably shared with them, and yet they still took advantage of the situation. So it's going to take a while for you to navigate through those wounds, and that's completely okay. If you were to, box me in and say, well, give us an example of a timeline, I would tell you that it probably took Samantha somewhere in the neighborhood of about 2+ years before she could forgive the affair partner. It was a long process. It just was very difficult to navigate through the layers of anger and animosity and betrayal that she experienced with the affair partner. Now, it probably took in the neighborhood of about a year or so to have this initial significant forgiveness towards me. Now, as you may remember, review session, forgiveness has layers to it, right? So at 2 years, she still maybe had some more layers to work through of forgiveness. By 3 years, Samantha had worked through most of the layers of forgiveness towards me. Until maybe around 5, there was some kind of stuff that she had to go, wow, I didn't realize this was here, and we worked through it. It's kind of a progression, if you will. But it's going to take a while for you to forgive that affair partner in a double betrayal. And finally, my suggestion to you would be that with the affair partner, unless they're a family member, I would suggest that you grieve that relationship and bury it, because I don't think that you're going to be able to have a relationship with that affair partner ever again and have your relationship with your spouse. The waters are too muddy. We really encourage unfaithful spouses who are trying to save their marriage to cut off all contact with their affair partner. And we would make that same suggestion to you, that if you are a betrayed spouse trying to save your marriage, you're going to have to cut off all contact with that affair partner, because it's going to muddy the waters in a way that you, and not because you're weak or frail or fragile or inept, but because you are dealing with a level of trauma and betrayal that you just don't need the added work of trying to navigate through the complexity of trying to forgive the affair partner who was a best friend. I know that this is a very sensitive issue, because when you have to grieve the loss of the life that you thought you had and working towards forgiving your spouse, the last thing that you want to do is grieve the loss of a best friend that you would ordinarily be running to try and grieve the betrayal. And now you can't do that. And that's why it's so important to find community like Harboring Hope or the EMS Weekend or things like that to help you navigate through this, because you're going to be very lonely. You're going to be alone and looking for comfort. And the very place that you would want to find comfort, besides just your spouse, your best friend, you can't do it. And so it's even more incumbent upon you to find a safe community where you can grieve and you can heal and you can really find a way of healing that doesn't just leave you alone in your trauma and your pain.